Philadelphia, get ready to be inspired. If you need help finding the light in the darkness, don't touch that dial. Let's navigate life through the lens of hope with Scotty P. Inspirational speaker Scotty P speaks the importance of mental health in society and encourages techniques to overcome the everyday mental health obstacles that hold us back in life. It's not just inspiration, it's Scotty P inspiration.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Scotty P Inspiration Show with your host, none other than me, Scott Prendergast, aka Scotty P. I'm super excited. I know I took a couple of weeks off here with season 4. That is for a good reason, though. Don't worry. It's because this book, I was putting it through the process of getting it out, and it now officially is. So this whole episode today is going to be about my new published book called, and it might be backwards here if you're viewing this on the screen, From Rock Bottom to Rock Solid, Learning to Navigate the Life Through the Lens of Hope. Okay, so this whole episode today is going to talk about, some of the stuff that's in the book that you can expect to read, kind of inspiration behind it, and also some of the strategies that are a part of it too. Because here on the Scotty P Inspiration Show, we're all about helping you to navigate your life through the lens of hope so you can rediscover that resilience within yourself. And sorry, I just adjusted the microphone a little bit. I think I'm going to rock with it this way today, okay? All right, everybody. So, like I was saying, I just published this new book, and there's a lot that goes into it. So I want to start by kind of just giving you an overall background about what this book is about so that you can have a better idea of what you're going to be getting into if you decide to pick it up, okay? So I'm going to read you the back cover. From Rock Bottom to Rock Solid isn't just a book, it's an anchor, a source of inspiration, and a friend that empowers you to overcome adversity. This book is your ticket to transformational journey towards hope and empowerment, because the path to resilience starts here. Through practical mindfulness and compassionate techniques, Prendergast empowers readers to validate their emotions, facilitating a path towards healing the darkest corners of the mind and urging readers to forge ahead. This book is your guide on the journey of self-discovery, personal growth, and emotional awareness. There's a little background, give you a little back on me. Scott J. Prendergast is a dedicated inspirational speaker, mental health advocate, and founder of Scotty P Inspiration LLC. A Temple University graduate based in Philadelphia, he travels nationwide sharing his story of hope and resilience, empowering audiences to overcome mental obstacles. With a compassionate approach and practical mindful strategies, Scott guides others towards healing. Featured on Fox 29 Good Day Philadelphia, Scott is passionate about mental health awareness and helping people navigate life with hope. All right, so that gives you an idea about what the book is about, gives you a little introduction on me as well if this is your first time watching my show today. But what I want to do with this episode is I want to go through a couple of different chapters here, and I want to just kind of give you, I guess, a little bit of the genesis of how this book started, why I wrote it, and what I hope that you, the reader, can gain from it. And I think without further ado, the best place to start with that is to talk about why I wrote this book. And for anyone who's familiar with me and my brand and what I do, you'll know about my story, and you know about me hitting a really low place with my depression in my life back when I was in college, but then being able to get out of that. And so for me, I realized that I'm not the only person who have gone through something like this, not by a long shot. Tons of thousands of millions of people are in the same boat of feeling like they're in this low place and they just don't know how to get out of it. And for me, when I did find some strategies and some things that worked to help me get out of that low place, I had an overwhelming desire to help other people to do the same. And that first started my junior year of college with writing. I would write down all the different feelings that I had, everything that I'd gone through, and little tips and tricks that I would give myself, essentially, so that I could remember how to work through these difficult struggles, right? I would walk around the city of Philadelphia for hours every single night, listening to music with this little notepad that I would have. It was like one of those legal notepads, and I would just fill up page after page after page, stopping in different parts of the city, writing down whatever was on my heart at that time. And sometimes I would look like sitting in Rittenhouse Square Park for 3 hours writing down. Sometimes it would look like walking all the way down to the Navy Yard in South Philly. Other times it would be walking to near the area in Dave & Buster's right on the waterfront on the Delaware. It was all over the city, and I would just write and write and write and listen to music. And it was crazy because the time would go so fast. I'd start walking at maybe, like 5 o'clock at night, and I'd get back and it'd be like midnight. And I didn't even realize because I was just so consumed in just writing all this different material and everything that was on my heart and that was going on in my life. And I did this for years, and I still walk a lot. It's not the same as it used to be, but it's still a big part of my life. But I realized one day, maybe 6 months after doing this, that all of this writing was actually not bad. It wasn't just incoherent, just nonsense that I was writing down just to get out of me. it actually made sense. And I showed it to a couple people who were close to me, and they started to say, "Hey, Scott, like this could really help some people." And I never realized that because I just looked at writing this out saying, hey, this is kind of my own version of therapy. I found that journaling was a big thing for me. And when I would write this down and listen to music and walk, kind of my three favorite things at the time, I felt so much better. And I felt like I could move through whatever I was dealing with. So I just viewed it as nothing else than a source of therapy to help me move through the struggles I was facing. But after some people, like I said, told me that this could really help someone, my thought process kind of changed. And I decided to get comfortable with the uncomfortable. And I put myself out there and I tried something new. And I remember on a Facebook group, it was a Temple University Facebook group for this website called The Odyssey Online. And it was a group of people at Temple, maybe like 10 or 15, and you would write an article every week and you would submit it to your editor, and then they would post it on this national website called The Odyssey Online. And I figured, you know what? I'm going to try something different. I'm going to go for this, man. This is not something I would usually do, but I was like, I'm going for it. Why not? And so I signed up and I started writing articles, and some of them started to get pretty popular. Because the way that this website was is that if an article got a lot of hits or a lot of likes, it would show up on the front page and people from all over the country could see it. And I had a couple that got on that front page. And it was at this point that I realized, okay, hold on. People are really relating to this stuff, what I'm talking about. And it made me realize that so many other people are dealing with similar situations as what I was dealing with. And the stuff that I was writing and talking about, they were picking up what I was putting down. And I remember this was like junior year, like I said, and going into senior year when I first started speaking, I always thought, maybe one day I could put this stuff together, make a collection of stories and strategies and put it together as a book. Maybe one day I can do that. And I remember junior year, I started writing it. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to be done in 3 weeks. That's cute. Definitely not, right? But that was the beginning of it. And fast forward a couple years, I start speaking all over the country for 5 or 6 years, and I kind of put writing on the back burner because then speaking was my new source of therapy. And I was taking what I had written about and I was speaking about it and seeing people's reaction to it firsthand, which was so gratifying, right? But then a few years ago, I'd say about maybe a year and a half ago, I just kind of felt that urge to pick up the pen again, so to speak, which nowadays is really just type some letters on a keyboard, right? But I went back, I reviewed a lot of the stuff that I had written during those long walks in the city and looked at some of the articles that I had wrote for the Odyssey Online when I wrote for them for a year. And I was like, you know what? It's time to put this together. Now's the time to do it. And I went through and I started writing what is this book right here that you see that has just been released. And that is available, quick plug, on Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, and Walmart.com. And again, it's called From Rock Bottom to Rock Solid, Learning to Navigate Life Through the Lens of Hope by Scott J. Prendergast. So that's kind of the backstory of how this worked out. And I'm not going to sit here and lie. This book, it was a bit of a pain it was a bit of a pain. It was a lot of writing, a lot of editing, a lot of submit this, change that, do this, do that. And it was really tough. And I was not a huge fan of the process, but I love how it turned out. And I'm so thankful for my publishers who helped me along the way, for my wife for supporting me, my family for supporting me. And I'm really happy with it. And I hope that you will be too. And so there's the background of the book. Okay, that's our first part of the show here. Let me just check our time and make sure, we're good. Because we know that here at the Scotty P Inspiration Show, you all are living life. You got a lot going on. And, you don't have an hour to always listen to a podcast. We try to keep it around 20 minutes, right? But what I want to do next is I want to kind of open this book up and I want to look at some of my favorite parts that I want to share with you. And I'm just doing this for the first time here. So I'm going to just see what I find here. And as I'm opening up to page 39. And I see something called Running Your Own Race Radar. And this was one of my favorite concepts that I came up with, I believe, my senior year of college, because I found myself starting to compare with everybody so often, all the time. Just comparison, living in this trap and running the hamster wheel of trying to do all these different things in my life and then immediately seeing someone else who I think is doing something better and then making myself feel terrible, right? So when I look here at Running Your Own Race Radar, the idea that I came up with, in this chapter, the chapter is called The Comparison Charade, mind you. When I talk about running your race radar, it's essentially about, being able to understand when you're starting to compare and kind of being aware of that and having your radar up for that. And then when you start to compare, being able to push yourself back into, okay, I'm going to run my own race. How am I going to run my own race? I'm going to look at what my goals are. I'm going to look at what my dreams are. I'm going to look at where I'm currently going in my life, and I'm going to allow that to be what fills my mind. Not if I'm not good enough as Johnny over here, or not as talented enough as Janie over here, or don't have as many degrees as Susie over here, right? So running your race radar, which I talk about in this chapter, the comparison charade, is all about becoming aware of when you start to compare yourself to other people, stopping yourself in that moment and bringing yourself back to your situation, your progress, where you're going, and really allowing those positive affirmations to keep you on that path of running your own race. And I love this concept. I like to come up with cheesy little names for things. So those of you who know me, that's what my vibe is. So throughout this book, there's tons of different names. I've got something called present moment self-questioning. I've got something called running your own race radar. Like I said, I've got something called secret service mode. I've got all kinds of little strategies that are based off of cognitive behavioral therapy techniques that are going to be easy for you to pick up and just say, hey, today I need to focus on, my secret service mode. And it'll just be a little reminder for you to stay aware with whatever it is that you're dealing with, right? And this book is filled with that. Filled with it. Every few pages, I see a new one as I'm looking through here. And I'm really proud of that. I think it's something that you all really like. As I'm looking a little bit further here throughout the book, one of my favorite chapters is Whose Approval Are You Seeking? I believe it is chapter 8. And I think when I was writing this chapter, I was out of college at this point, and I was speaking all over the country, and I was having a lot of success. Things were going great. But then I started to get some feedback from people, and most of the feedback up until this point had been all positive. I had never gotten any negative feedback, and I was like, this is amazing. And it was around that time that it wasn't negative feedback, but it was people saying, oh, you should try doing this. Or, oh, if you did this, you'll reach a whole new group of people. Oh, if you do that, you'll really expand your reach. And it started to become something like that. And I was like, oh, I guess, what I'm doing is not good enough. I need to take this advice people are giving me, and I need to add it to my story and to me speaking. And again, this came from a great place from different people that would see me and say this stuff. But here's where the problem came. I would start to change what I was saying and change the way that I was delivering it so that I could try to seek and gain the approval from these other audiences and other people that I was told I need to, I guess, satisfy. Maybe that's the right word. And because of that, I wasn't really being truly authentic. Like, I was being authentic, but I was changing up what I would say way too often because I would see, oh, well, I was told this group of people needs to hear more about this, or that group of people needs to hear more about this, or I need to portray myself more as this. And I started just kind of losing myself because all of a sudden now I'm like, okay, I'm trying to please every single person, every single type of person, every single venue. I'm trying to change something up so that I can be what they want me to be. And I got to the point where it was just absolutely exhausting. And I had to sit down. I had to get back to my roots, which is writing. And I started to write what was going on. And that's where this chapter, Whose Approval Are You Seeking, came from. And I had to understand that, look, yes, obviously it's important what other people think. I mean, at the end of the day, we could say, I don't care what people think. We do. And you have to in some way. But we can't let what people think totally dictate every choice and action and thought that we make, take, or have. And I think that's where the silver lining is. And that's what this chapter is about, is like, okay, am I seeking other people's approval? Yes. Am I allowing their approval to control me? In my case at the time, it was yes. And I said, okay, so how can I do this? How can I get back to my own roots? And it was realizing that I don't need anyone else's approval. I don't need somebody to tell me that I have to do this or have to do it that way. It's always nice to take advice, but at the end of the day, I've got to be true to who I am and what I feel is right and true, and gaining my own approval first. And that's really, I'm going to dive deep into this with this chapter. Again, it's chapter 8, called Whose Approval Are You Seeking? And I think this is something that so many people that I work with and I talk with are struggling with as well. And I always point to this chapter as like, hey, I want you to read this chapter. I think it's going to be something that's going to help you a lot. Because even for me, I mean, this is my job. Like, I get paid to speak all over. I do life coaching, help a lot of different people. I've got to make sure that I'm staying true and realize that I don't need anyone else's approval because I have my own. I've got to search and seek out my own approval first and make sure that I'm happy with the person I see staring across at me in the mirror before I go out and try to, prove something to other people or make everybody feel this or that because now I'm switching up what I'm saying. And at the end of the day, I can tell you from lived and experience that is just it's not a great fun place to be in, and it's an exhausting mentally and physically place to be in. And I think this chapter is going to talk all about that. So chapter 8, whose approval are you seeking? Something for you all to check out, consider. As I'm looking through, oh yeah, this is a good one here too. In chapter 7, I just flipped to this. The chapter is called The Circumstance and Environment Trap. It's all about, hey, you can't always control your circumstances and environment, but what you can control is how you choose to react and how you choose to respond, to those circumstances and environment. And with that, I got another one of my little things called being responsive over reactive, right? And I think the important thing is that sometimes when you're in a difficult situation and circumstances, which when I wrote this chapter, I don't remember exactly what was going on in my life, but I know I was being reactive a lot. And circumstances can make you react. They can make you emotional and just live in that emotional based thinking, which can be a really dangerous place to live. Sometimes being in that emotional place, that emotional state of thinking, just reacting. It's tough and it's exhausting. And I think if I remember correctly, when I was writing this, I was just going through a couple of different things that were making me very reactive, right? And I had to learn to become responsive to this situation as opposed to reactive. Now, I remember these circumstances that I was dealing with. It wasn't really something that I can control. It was out of my hands. I did everything I could, but it was out of my hands, right? And instead of forcing it to try to fit my will, I had to step back and I'd say, okay, I cannot control this circumstance right now. I can react to this by being angry, annoyed, sad, frustrated, or I can respond to this current circumstance and situation by looking at what good can be taken from this, looking at an opportunity for me to develop myself in a new way, looking for something good that's going to come from it. And so really focusing on that, responding to that situation instead of reacting. And here's the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, if you will. When I spent all my time reacting to that situation, I didn't get anywhere. But when I learned to kind of accept what it was and learn to respond to the situation, guess what? That's when the situation finally changed. Not immediately, not like, oh, it's great now, yay. No, it still took time, but I did see it change once I changed on the inside and learning to respond to what was going on instead of reacting. And when I talk about this in this chapter, I think a lot of people are going to relate to it. I think a lot of people are going to like it. Again, it's chapter 7, The Circumstance and Environment Trap. And there's a little subtitle. It's on page 85 that says responsive over reactive. Something to keep in mind. That helped me a ton. And I know it's helped a lot of people I've worked with as well. All right, let's see what else we got in the book here. There's so much stuff. And again, I'm not going to be able to get to everything in this episode. But I mean, you all have heard me talk about emergency joys so many times. I've got a whole chapter on that. You can see the full story of where emergency joys came from. Some of you know me, but you might not know that actual story. And I think that's a really cool one. So that's chapter 4, Emergency Joys. I really definitely encourage you to check that out because you're going to see the genesis of emergency joys and how cool that really is. I will tell you, it's an emotional chapter. It's a heavy chapter, so be ready. But and that's one of my favorites for sure. So chapter 4, definitely check that out. Let's see what else we got here that I want to bring up with you all. I think, I talk a lot about seeking validation, which I already talked about in the comparison charade. For the format of this book, one of the things that I did was I gave obviously every chapter a name, no duh, but I started with a quote for every single one. And one of my favorite quotes is here, and I've used this on the show before. It's actually from former Dallas Cowboys quarterback Tony Romo at his retirement speech. I love this quote, so I'm going to share it with you real quick. And this is the quote that I chose for chapter 2 of my book, which is called Self-Perception Sabotage. The quote is as follows. I feel like we all have two battles or two enemies going on. One is with the man across from you. The second is with the man inside of you. I think once you control the one inside of you, the one across from you really doesn't matter. And that's from former Dallas Cowboys quarterback and current CBS broadcaster Tony Romo. Wow. That quote really does set the tone for what I'm going to be talking about in chapter 2 of self-perception sabotage. And I go really in depth in that. And I talk about how for the majority of my life, I viewed myself as somebody that I thought everybody else thought I was. Does that kind of make sense? I believed that I was something because of what I thought other people may have thought I was. You might have to rewind that a couple times. I know it's tricky, but I think you could probably grasp what I'm saying. And it really threw me off because I felt like I didn't know who I was, and I felt like I didn't know what I was doing, and I didn't know what my path was or what my calling was or what I wanted to do because I was just so consumed with trying to alter myself because of what I thought other people may think that I was, even though I wasn't that or was that. I don't know, because I didn't even know what they thought that I was, because I couldn't talk to these people. They were just faceless people, right? That you would see in a crowd. And I found that my self-perception was really sabotaged by my own doing for thinking like that for so long. And I talk in depth about that in this story. And I think it's actually one of my more powerful stories throughout this book. And one of the things that I share as I'm flipping through flipping through the pages of self-perception sabotage, which is chapter 2, I'm seeing that I wrote this. Oh yeah, I wrote, have you ever felt that way before? Like the world sees you as this one person, yet you see yourself as the complete and polar opposite. Those types of days when people are complimenting you because of something you've done or how you look, yet you can't accept a single kind word because you permanently see yourself at your worst. It's moments like that where even the warm words of those closest to you still fail to penetrate through the icy cold shell of disdain you've trapped yourself in. Wow. That was on page 20, chapter 2, self-perception sabotage, towards the bottom of page 20. Man, I'm sorry. I'm reading that again. I'm like, yo, that was pretty good. And I wrote that. I'm pretty proud of that. Anyways, hey, yo, like, let's just be real here. I mean, I'm sure everybody can relate to that. Like the world sees you as one person, yet you see yourself as the complete and polar opposite. You know, how many times do we hear it? People that we think have everything going right, you know, whether it's celebrities or the popular kid in school or the person that, you know, looks amazing in every way, or, you know, the person that's got billions of dollars, right? And we think that they have it all, yet these people look at themselves and they're not happy with who they are, and they don't know who they are, and they're brutal towards themselves, and their self-talk is very detrimental and mean to themselves, right? But on the outside, we just think, oh, that person's got everything, right? And I think what this shows is that you just don't know what somebody's self-perception is. And so just be cautious with that. Be cautious with judging other people on it. Be cautious with judging yourself too. And we've got to learn to be a little bit kinder to ourselves. And we've got to learn to control that man or woman on the inside of us, kind of like the quote that Tony Romo was saying. And that's why I chose that quote, right? I mean, people can be getting all kinds of praise and people can be telling us all these amazing things on the outside. But when you're in that low place and you don't have a good self-perception, you can't receive any of those compliments. You can't receive any of that love or that joy. And I speak of a place of experience for when I wrote this book. I remember being in college and people were saying, Scott, you know, you're doing this, you're doing so well, yada, yada, yada. I remember I was the first ever freshman to get a full-time internship with the 76ers. I was 18. People were like, this is amazing. Got all this great stuff going on. Then I was working for the Eagles, all this stuff. And I felt horrible on the inside. And I didn't like myself. And people would tell me, oh, you're this, you're that, all these compliments. And I couldn't accept or receive any of them because I was so stuck with seeing myself a certain way. And I had to work through that so that I could see myself in a positive way, in a positive light, the way that I wanted to see myself. And then once I changed that, and again, this took time. It did not happen overnight. It took years. But when I finally did that, then I was able to take compliments and take feedback and things that people gave me and actually receive it and actually accept it, because now I liked the person that I was and I was comfortable with that person. I was happy with that person. And I think anyone, if you read this chapter 2 of this book, I want you to really just dive into it and see yourself in my shoes. Not really, excuse me, not see yourself in my shoes. I want to see yourself in the stories. I want you to see yourself in the stories that I wrote.
And I think it's going to be a story that is very similar to yours. And I want you to look at that and look at the strategies I share and look at the stories. And I want you to ask yourself, okay, like, how do I feel about myself? How do I feel about me when I'm laying in bed staring at the ceiling at 3 a.m. in the morning and I'm having these thoughts in my head? Am I happy with me? Am I lying to myself? Am I not being who I am? Am I not able to take compliments and good feedback from other people because I can't see it in myself? Ask yourself those questions. And when once you do, taking that first step forward, can be tough, but one of the first steps that we want to do to work on that self-perception is honestly using positive affirmations. I'm trying to look through here to see what I wrote. One of the things that I was right is step one, you want to fight back against those negative thoughts in the moment. In order to combat this, you need to find a way to pause and bring yourself back to rational thinking, right? Okay, and then step two is coping in a healthy way. Of course, we obviously know that. But back to step one, I think what's important for us is that when you start to have those negative thoughts about yourself and when you start to say mean things to yourself, even when other people are saying good things to you, I want you to stop. I want you to pause and I want you to ask yourself, like, why am I doing this? Is this going to help me? Is this productive? And the answer is no, it's not productive. It's not going to help me. And then your job is to find out, well, why am I feeling like this about myself? And in this book, I actually have something that'll help you to get to the bottom of that why. It's called the downward arrow questioning or downward questioning arrow, something like that. It's a therapeutic technique that I've learned that is very helpful. It's in a lot of scientific journals and all that fun stuff too, if you care about that. It's used in therapy all the time, and it helps us really get to the bottom of what we're feeling. And I think when you can ask yourself why, and be honest with yourself, you're going to get to the point where you find an answer that might be enlightening to you, to be able to be like, okay, so that's why I feel this way. And then say, well, what can I do to move past that? And then you start making your list and using your emergency joys and use practicing positive self-talk and talking with people, using positive coping skills, going to therapy, whatever you have to do, journaling, whatever it is. But you first got to kind of get to the bottom of that why. And when we get to the bottom of that why, then we can start that process to change that self-perception that we have about ourselves. So this chapter is great, man. It's chapter 2, again, self-perception sabotage. All right. Don't know why I said it like that, but felt right in the moment. So we're going to do it. All right. So let me just, again, check our time. I'm sorry, my phone screen keeps going out, and that's how I'm trying to check the time to see what we've got here. Because, again, I want to be cognizant of everyone. Oh, my goodness, we're at 27 minutes. Gee whiz. All right. So we're going to wrap this up. Look, I'd love to go on here, but again, part of this show is that we keep it under 30 minutes because I know you've got a lot going on in your life. But I want you to check out this book. I mean, you don't have to just take it from me, from listening to a radio show. I really think this book can help a lot of people. Again, it's called From Rock Bottom to Rock Solid, Learning to Navigate Life Through the Lens of Hope. It is by me, Scott J. Prendergast. It's available on Amazon.com. It's available on Walmart.com. It is also available on BarnesandNoble.com. And if you see me speak, if I'm coming to your business or your school, I always have copies on me as well, and I can sell it that way too. So everyone, thanks so much. I really appreciate it. And I appreciate all the people who have supported me as I put this book out. I really opened up my heart to the deepest degree to share this. And I put everything I possibly could into it. It's 115 pages. It's not super long. You can read it in a day if you want. But I made sure that every word is really jam-packed with something that's going to help you and not just filled with pointless fluff just to fill pages. So I am super proud of this book, and I hope that you all can read it. I hope you can enjoy it. I hope you can take something positive away from it, because ultimately that's what Scotty P Inspiration right here, my business, is all about. And this book embodies all of that. It really, really does. And as we wrap this up today, I want to read you the final quote that I chose for my last chapter, chapter 10. And I want to kind of end with this quote because I think it's very apropos, if you will, to what, where everybody's at in their life at some point. So the quote is this: learning that it can be more terrible to live than die, he is driven onward through the burning crucible of desert, where holy men and prophets are cleansed and purged for God's great purpose, until at last, at the end of human strength, beaten into dust from which he came, the metal is ready for the Maker's hand. And that quote is by Cecil B. DeMille as the narrator in the 1957 movie, I believe it was, The Ten Commandments. And if you know me, you know I'm a Christian, and you know that faith is at the center of everything that I do. And so I love that quote there. But that chapter is chapter 10 that quote is from. And the chapter is called You're Ready. And I wrote this because when I did initially write it, I was trying to tell myself, look, Scott, you're ready for this. You're ready to move out of this dark place. You're ready to move forward with your life. And I want you all to know that this entire book is kind of that sign to you, if you will, that you're ready. It's your time to move through it. Not, oh, I'm going to wait 7 years and then I'll move through it. No, the time is now. You can do this. You are ready. You have everything you need on the inside of you to move through whatever that struggle is in your life. But you have to believe that it is time for you, that you're ready, that the metal is ready for the maker's hand. And that's what I want to leave you with today. So thank you so much, everybody. Sorry again that it's been a few weeks. It was very busy with trying to get this book out, but I'll certainly be back giving you a lot of content, if not on a weekly basis and on a bi-weekly basis. All right, everyone. So thanks so much. Check the book out. Really appreciate it. You all are fantastic. And I hope to see you soon. So have a great night, everybody. Great day, whatever it is for you. Take it easy. Scotty P signing off.